We all have our loops, our habits, behaviors that keep us walking in circles, reaching for the same solutions over and over again, thinking each time they'll take you somewhere new. But they don't. But still, it's the neural pathway of least resistance, a path you made. It's the one that kept you safe when you were a child. You learned to push people away before they could hurt you. And now, as an adult, you're still stuck right where you started. Alone.
Who is Ivan Beck? What is the Backrooms? Or what are the Backrooms? I think the movie actually answers both of these questions. At first glance, it doesn't appear to deepen the YouTube series lore that much, but I think upon further inspection, it does. Let's start with what we know about Ivan. Side note, I want to quickly point out that a lot of lore analysis has been done by other YouTubers that I'm kind of using as a foundation for this video. I definitely did not discover all of the secrets that I'm going to be talking about. So thanks to MA2, Wendigoon, Red, Drew's channel, Ivan was born in Karlovy, Czechoslovakia during the Second World War. Although it's implied he spent a lot of his upbringing in the US, so I'm inferring that his upheaval from his initial home was a very traumatic experience. That'll be important. During the events of Overflow, Ivan lost his memory and presumably his right eye was somehow damaged. Ivan, as far as I know, hasn't been shown on screen in the YouTube series or in the movie, but Clyde was shown having a phone conversation with him during the events of Peter Tench's reemergence. He's also acquainted with real-life artist George Brahm somehow. Keep that in mind for later. Now let me discuss what is known about the Backrooms itself. I'm going to be talking strictly about Kane Parsons' canon, the one that the movie is based off of. Kane has said that the Backrooms, or complex as I'll refer to it for the rest of the video, is not a dream or a simulation. It's an actual physical reality in some sense. The complex is physically a real place. As shown so far, it doesn't contain any architecture from before the 1970s when the events of Overflow take place. It can distort time, sending Peter Tench forward a couple of months, or sending Kane Pixels, the videographer from the first found footage, sending his camera forward by 6 years. Now let's talk about what the movie revealed about the Backrooms. The movie revealed that the complex creates architecture based on people's memories. It remembers those places over and over again, getting the details less right each time. And the still lifes within the complex, first seen in Found Footage 3, are copies of people from memories. Quick side note, Kane Parsons' canon about the Backrooms incorporates a lot of real-life quantum physics elements that I am not remotely equipped to dive into. I recommend the YouTuber Red if you want to learn more about the applied science that kind of goes into the back end of this. There's some things that I think are implied by the movie about how the Backrooms works and what it does. I think the movie is meant to imply that the complex connects to certain people and recreates architecture from their memories. For example, Clark or Mary, or incidentally, the man from Found Footage 3, not Robbie, but the man that Robbie talks to across the null zone. The man whose memory that house is based off of that Robbie visits. I think that the complex recreates specific people's memories, but not everyone's. For example, the complex doesn't recreate Naren's memories, the scientist from the beginning of the movie. When Naren is traveling through the Backrooms, he sees elements from Clark's store, not any elements we're privy to that he remembers from his own life. Also keep in mind, when Naren is exploring the Backrooms in the beginning of the movie, it's already created elements of Clark's store, even though Clark hasn't been there yet. Also, at no point in the movie do Kat or Bobby encounter elements from their own memories. I realize that their apartment complex is recreated in the Backrooms, but think about this for a second. Clark also went to their apartment complex, and the angle that the complex is shown from is the same angle that it's shown from earlier in the movie in real life when Clark visits there. Nothing that Kat or Bobby see exclusively without Clark present is shown in the Backrooms. Also, during the Found Footage series, the videographers in those episodes don't express familiarity to their surroundings. It's like the Backrooms placed them in locations that were recreations of other people's memories, not theirs. Furthermore, in Found Footage 2, the videographer, whose name I've heard is Madison, encounters art pieces pieces by George Brahm. I believe in other videos, other characters also encounter pieces of art by George Brahm. Just keep in mind that according to Kane, George Brahm was a friend of Ivan Beck, or he knew Ivan Beck somehow. So presumably George Brahm pieces would be like a point of familiarity to Ivan Beck. It would be in Ivan's memories. Because the complex does remember certain people's memories, specifically Clark and Mary and the man from Found Footage 3, I'm inferring that the complex connects to specific people who are trapped in loops, because that's what Mary's opening monologue was all about, and also that's what the theme of the movie is. For example, Clark's loop is that he's trying to prove to himself and or other people that his failed marriage and his failed career in life isn't his fault and that he doesn't need to change. Meanwhile, Mary's loop that she's trapped in is trying to save other people, presumably because she couldn't save her mentally ill mother from her issues that she had before their apartment or their house or whatever it was destroyed. Another thing that reinforces this thesis is that Mary escapes the complex pretty much right after she destroys the physical manifestation of her loop, the concrete handprint. A side implication that could be gleaned from this is that probably the man in Found Footage 3 whose house was recreated was also stuck in some kind of loop. When Robbie first enters the copy of the house, you can see that there's a liquor bottle on the table, and there's also some signs of a struggle in the kitchen. There's a chair knocked over, there's stains on the floor, and there's like a boot sticking out of the floor in the direction away from the table, almost as if someone was running away. When the man first hears Robbie, he also has a line about like, "Are you the person who keeps trying to talk to my boys?" or something to that effect.
I don't want to be the guy who keeps coming around here trying to talk to my boys.
I'm kind of reaching here, but that could be like an indication that CPS was trying to talk to his kids or something like that. This man could be a sort of DV situation, similar to what's implied to be the case with Clark. It seems like Kane does that a lot. He implies things through context clues without ever directly spelling them out. Anyway, putting that aside, all this talk about loops, I think that Ivan is trapped in a loop as well. So far, Ivan is demonstrated to be the highest authority of Async, a company which has demonstrated numerous repetitive actions. For example, trying to open the gateway over and over again, presumably for years, and only succeeding on their 6th attempt. Another example is how they keep sending researchers and scientists into the complex every day, despite the losses, injuries, and deaths that they keep racking up as a result. For example, Mark, or Naren, or Peter Tench, possibly others depicted in Clark's mural in the movie. Because of all this, my conclusion is that the complex is drawn to people who are stuck in loops, like Clark, or Mary, or possibly the man from Found Footage 3, because the complex itself is stuck in a loop. People think that Ivan's memories are somehow lost or trapped in the complex. In a sense, I think that that's true, but I think it's true in the sense that Ivan is the complex, or at least he controls the complex somehow. I think the overarching blueprint of the complex, the yellow walls and the buzzing fluorescent lights that permeate pretty much all of it, are a manifestation of some memory from Ivan's mind, something presumably very important. Keep in mind that this aesthetic is the backdrop for basically every specific memory or room within the complex. If this is true, then it would explain why every specific memory created inside the back rooms, whether it's Clark's store or Mary's book signing or that dad's house from Found Footage 3, it would explain why all of these locations are created inside of larger yellow fluorescent light rooms. Because even though these are specific other people's memories, it's still Ivan that is kind of behind creating them. He's the one that's creating physical manifestations of these other people's memories inside of his own mind or his greater consciousness, or at least inside the physical manifestation of it, which is the complex. If this is true, it explains two things. One, why Ivan Beck has never appeared on screen, at least as far as anyone knows. Two, it explains why Clark called Mary in the movie from the back rooms. I don't think he actually called her. For reference, I'm talking about in the movie when Mary gets that voicemail from Clark saying that he's opened the window and he's not coming back. That voicemail, by the way, is what prompts her to go investigate the back rooms and leads to her being trapped in them. For starters, in the voicemail, Clark says that he opened the window, but he and Mary never discuss the window. I know it's a concept in her book and she talks about it in that infomercial or whatever, but she and him never directly discuss it and it's never really a focal point of their talks. I think that voicemail was actually somehow Ivan recreating Clark's voice in order to lure Mary to the complex. I think that Ivan is somehow able to do this, and it explains how he's able to talk to Clyde on the phone whenever Peter Tench reemerges from what they thought was him missing. I think that Ivan knew about that the whole time and just never told the rest of async even when they were declaring Peter dead. So if this is all true, then here are the implications of it. One, I think that Ivan somehow created or manifested the Backrooms during the events of the accident in Overflow. Two, it's possible that his body was somehow destroyed or lost in that accident, and he could be trying to recreate a manifestation of his physical body or some kind of form for him to inhabit. Three, the complex recreation of multiple versions of a memory may not be intentional. It could be that every time Ivan thinks of a memory, whether his or someone else's, the complex recreates a physical version of it without him intending to do that. There's a psychology concept called memory mirage, or recollection reconsolidation, have fun saying that 5 times fast, which states that every time you think about a memory or every time you ruminate on it, the memory changes a little bit. Part of why eyewitness testimony is considered so unreliable. This concept is echoed by Clark in the movie when he says it remembers things over and over again, and each time it remembers them, it remembers less. If the rooms are created by Ivan remembering them, then this would explain why each time he recreates them, they're a little bit worse. I want to answer some issues with my theory that I think people might point out. One, my theory doesn't explain why Phil says that async is trying to stop the null zones from happening at the end of the movie. This could just be that async doesn't know Ivan's actual goal, or that he's disembodied. I think that Clyde knows, but maybe the organization as a whole doesn't. Two, Kane's canon, again, incorporates a lot of elements of real science, and as far as I know, there's not really any concept in science that would explain how a man's consciousness could physically create manifestations of whole buildings. This is true, and my response to this argument is that maybe this is just the point where the fiction meets science fiction, I guess. I honestly don't really have a better rebuttal to this one. Three, if the complex only connects to certain people, then why were those from the found footage series drawn into null zones? I think that this was just sort of a mistake, that the null zones happened and that the characters from the found footage series happened to fall into them. I think Ivan's experiment in Overflow created a sort of tear in reality that just causes more and more null zones to appear. This is mirrored by what Phil says in the movie, that more of these openings are being created and we don't know how to stop them. It's also possible that Ivan, as presumably the head of async, has misled the async employees and the Department of Energy into thinking that he's trying to slow the degradation or stop the null zones from being created. Like, he could be lying, is what I'm saying. Fourth potential hole in my theory is, what was Ivan trying to accomplish with the initial experiment in Overflow? The most commonly accepted theory for this, again thanks to Red the YouTuber, is that Ivan was attempting to create an inexhaustible power source and that the complex being created was an unintended side effect of the accident. Number 5 is that the movie was not written by Kane Parsons. Therefore, the screenplay elements claiming that the complex recreates memories may not have been part of Kane's initial vision. I think that this is certainly plausible, but Kane has said in interviews that he shared his creative vision and the canon with the production team of the movie. So this theory assumes that everything that was said in the movie was in accordance with Kane's creative vision, and that the screenwriters tailored the story to fit to his pre-existing canon. Obviously, that could not be the case, but it would be cool if this theory is true, so I hope that it is. Some closing thoughts. I think that whether Ivan still has a physical body or not, he was somehow separated from normal reality in the events of Overflow. Whether that means his body was trapped in the Backrooms or that his consciousness was stuck there without any openings, I'm not sure. I think that Kane's Not Kane Pixel's music track titled "Congratulations, Ivan" is in reference to the successful experiment opening the gateway. There's a drawing of Ivan cradling like a head injury above his right eye, and then there's also a larger shadow looming behind him of him cradling his right eye, and then below all of that there's a depiction of Async's gateway. I think that this drawing is meant to represent 3 things. One, the picture of Ivan himself is a depiction of his consciousness or his physical body if he still has one. 2, the shadow behind him is the manifestation of his consciousness or the complex mirroring his movements exactly. 3, the picture of the gateway beneath all of that is a representation of the complex and how it is completely controlled by Ivan, whether intentionally or not. Also, there is another image of the gateway, but rather than seeing the Backrooms through it, you see like Ivan's eye, like his undamaged eye, his left, I believe, staring through the gateway. I think this image both reinforces and confirms that Ivan is the complex himself, that he's watching the real world through the gateway and through the null zones that are being created. All of this said, Backrooms is by far the most cerebral piece of horror movie I've tried to analyze. I think the movie's message of breaking cycles and loops is an important message because, like Mary says in the movie, it's always possible to choose a different path and end up somewhere new, rather than retreading the same cycle and ending up right back where you started, alone.